Hello everyone. We are going to move on with our solving equations today, and we're going to do something a little bit new but not terribly new. You see a few equations in front of you that may look different. However, what we need to do to isolate x isn't something that you haven't seen before. If you notice in this first one and in all of them, we have these parentheses. So in order to get x by itself, the very first thing that we have to do is not an inverse operation, but actually get rid of those parentheses, which we do by using the distributive property, which I'm sure you remember. So multiplying or distributing this 2 on the outside to everything inside would leave me with 4, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 2x equals 10. And be careful with that term right there. Remember, you're multiplying both terms inside by 2. And once you do that, I think you know where to go from there. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and we end up with negative 2x equals 6. And then we're going to divide both sides by a negative 2 because I want to get x by itself, and there's a negative 2 in front of it. And I end up with x equals negative 3. Short of that first line, nothing really terribly new. Let's move on to the next one. Taking a look at number 2, very similar problem. This time I'm going to distribute the 4 that's on the outside of those parentheses. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 2, or negative 2, is negative 8. Set that equal to 20. Notice that nothing's really disappearing. And then again, from here, let's use our inverse operations. We have a minus 8. We're going to add 8 to both sides, which leaves me with 4x equals 28. And then dividing both sides by a 4 to get x by itself, I end up with x equals 7. Okay, let's try a couple more. Now, both in the last two examples, notice that we're distributing a negative number, which doesn't really change anything, but it does mean we need to be pretty careful. So when I distribute a negative 2, remember that that's going to change the sign of everything. So negative 2 times x will make it a negative 2x. Negative 2 times a positive 5 makes it a negative 10. So be careful with that. You can always double check that in your calculator. And then from here on in, we're going to use our inverse operations. We're going to add 10 to both sides to get rid of that minus 10. And we're going to end up with negative 2x equals 22. And then again, we're going to divide both sides by a negative 2 to get x by itself. And we end up with x equals, and make sure you're careful with your minus signs, negative 11. 22 divided by negative 2 is a negative 11. Let's try number 4. And lastly, in number 4, this time we're going to distribute that negative 3 that you see on the outside. And remember, that changes all the signs. So x, when multiplied by a negative 3, becomes negative 3x. And be careful with this next term. Negative 3 times negative 2 will give me a positive 6. That's an easy place to lose a minus sign. So be careful with that. And then, again, trying to get x by itself, we're going to subtract the 6 from both sides. And we're left with negative 3x equals 36. And then dividing both sides by a negative 3, we end up with x equals negative 12. As I said before, really nothing terribly new. I know you've seen the distributive property before. Your homework is just a couple of examples just like this.